Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today we're going to be talking about the success of Baldur's Gate 3 and how that has apparently completely freaked out the entire gaming industry at large. Like, the success of Baldur's Gate 3 has actually realistically surpassed even the expectations that longtime fans of D&D and the game franchise in general had for it. But even though that's a good thing, there are people in the gaming industry, gaming developers, and people who work at these major studios and these talking heads at all these different gaming journalism quote-unquote outlets. They're all freaking out about this, right? Because Baldur's Gate 3 has come out and it's realistically shaken up the meta, if you will, of how video games release. I mean, you take a look at 95% of AAA titles in the last, I don't know, let's be generous, 5 years, okay? You could really stretch this back to like maybe even 10 and the point still stand, but just for the sake of generosity, right? Let's say the last 5 years. Most of these AAA titles have been coming out unfinished. You're basically relying on the developers to work on the game and support it for another 2 years to get the full experience. The game's content is cut down dramatically, so the cut content can be resold to you via map updates or DLC packs or whatever it may be. 90% of the progression in the game is now locked behind battle passes that you have to pay for premium versions of, or, you know, some sort of microtransaction. You're essentially paying $70 at this point with most of these games for a online shop that has some functionality of a video game, but won't be the full video game for another 8 to 12 months. So, obviously, a lot of gaming fans have become extremely disappointed by this trend. I've made tons of videos here on the channel discussing these kinds of things, but Baldur's Gate 3 came out and it really isn't any of these things. It's a full $60 experience with a full game that runs fine, you know, you don't have to wait for all these patch updates to fix the performance. The gameplay is good, people are enjoying what they're getting out of it. To put it simply, it's a full released, polished game for that AAA price. Now, it's unfortunate that we've gotten to the point in gaming where a game like Baldur's Gate can do everything right and then everyone has to hail it as like a messiah of the gaming industry, but like I said, we have gaming journalists and people inside the industry now that are seeing this success, seeing how people are getting so happy about this game, and they're trying to pull the floodgates out real quick and make sure people quote-unquote don't make this their expectations. So, while Baldur's Gate 3 is being widely celebrated by fans and developers alike, some are panicking that this could set new expectations from fans. Alright, so let's discuss these quote expectations from fans. I really don't think that these hypothetical expectations that would be set by the success of Baldur's Gate are realistically anything that gamers haven't expected for their entire time playing games, right? Like, in this case, the expectations that they think are unrealistic for us to have as like a standard are AAA games releasing on time, releasing finished, actually being fun and enjoyable, not milking you for money around every single fucking corner, and not cutting content from the game to sell back to you, right? Those are apparently the expectations that are just so out there, so ludicrous, that we should not expect that to be the standard. Which I don't understand, because for like the whole entire history of the gaming industry, that's been the fucking standard. I mean, even like, let's take a trip back to the 80s, right? Most of us watching this video, we weren't even alive, but this is one of the most important and impactful moments in gaming industry history, right? The first big crash in the video game market. So back in 1983, the video game industry in the few years before that, you know, had been fucking exploding. That's when video games were really starting to come onto the home market. You know, arcades were gaining popularity. People were starting to play games. Well, during this massive rise in popularity of video games, quite like what we've been seeing in the last few years, there was a massive decline in quality for video games that were coming out. So as more and more hype was building up, more and more developers were releasing complete shit piles. And so people eventually started realizing, hey, I mean, we're wasting money buying these games. They're not good, they suck, and frankly, there's better things we can put our money towards, like the computer. That's coming out soon too. And so, the video game crash of 1983 devastated the entire second generation of console gaming in North America. Arcades even saw a pretty bad, you know, little hit from this whole thing. And then a few years later, after the bankruptcies and the industry kind of recovered, that's when things started picking everything up. Mostly due to the success of the NES, by the way. However, the same kind of story applies here too. Like in the last few years, we've been seeing this massive decline in quality for video games that have been coming out. AAA titles with millions upon millions upon millions of dollars in budget are releasing like they were made by 4 guys in a bedroom with a free copy of, you know, some engine, right? And that's pathetic, and people realize that, and people have been pissed off about that for multiple different releases at this point, right? But apparently, you're unrealistic for expecting a game like Baldur's Gate 3 to set new expectations by doing everything that gamers actually want done with their product. I mean, it's just, I don't understand it. Like, the gaming industry is so terrified of actually bettering itself, right? These developers, these publishers and whatnot, they get so fucking jealous when good video games come out. I remember last year when Elden Ring came out and everybody was loving it, everybody was playing it. You had, you know, game developers from other software studios and whatnot that were on Twitter fucking complaining about the success of the game. It really feels like for some of these developers, the gaming industry has just turned into a big fucking jealousy pit, right? Where if their product isn't doing better than your product, they get really fucking mad about it, right? No matter how good your product is, no matter how much people enjoy it, what boundaries it's set, you know, that doesn't matter, right? We can't expect for this to be the standard in gaming. You know, a game that had, from what I understand, 400 plus developers, millions of dollars in budget, years to develop, right? Yeah, you can't expect for them in that time period with that budget and that team to come up with a good experience. That would be an unrealistic expectation. Well, the Baldur's Gate 3 developers, they knocked it out of the park. As of right now, Baldur's Gate 3 has like a 97 out of 100 on Metacritic, which is one of the highest scores of all time. Fans everywhere are giving the game universal acclaim. I have not seen genuinely one bad review of the game. I'm not even like a big like D&D person. I've never played Baldur's Gate before, but the reviews of the game have been so good and so positive, talking about, oh, this is a new benchmark for gaming. This is a wonderful game, things like that. I bought the game before I made this video and I'm downloading it right now so I can play it later. I have no idea anything about this franchise, anything about D&D. I've never played it a day in my life. But the reviews of the game have been so positive that I'm like, fuck it, I might as well give it a try, right? And that's what gaming used to be. I remember when I was a kid and I'd go to school and people would be like, oh dude, have you played Halo 3 that just came out the other day? It's fucking awesome. And then I'd go over to a buddy's house and play it and it was fucking awesome, right? Like for instance, back when Call of Duty was on top, I remember one day, this is like when I went into multiplayer COD, right? I went to school one day, it was like November, right when Black Ops, the first one, came out in 2010, I believe. And I went to school and all the kids at school were like, dude, the new Black Ops is so fucking fire, bro. Have you played it? And I'm like, no, I actually haven't. I don't have it. And they were like, oh, dude, you gotta get this game, bro. It's so fucking good. And so that day I went home and asked for it for Christmas, and that's what I got. So that was how video games used to be. But like, I genuinely can't name very many examples of that being the case today, right? Now, I'm sure there's kids in school who are like, oh, bro, you gotta download Fortnite or fucking whatever, right? But ultimately, like, gaming isn't in the state that it was back then. Like, that was when you could expect these quote-unquote unrealistic expectations to be met. Very commonly, too. Like, these studios had no problem doing this repeatedly. I mean, studios weren't just dropping one-off good games, you know? They were actually constantly bringing out classics. And I feel like that was a time when the gaming industry wasn't, like I said, in this, like, pit of jealousy and, like, hatred and vitriol for one another, where your success outweighs my success, and therefore that can't be acceptable. Like, for instance, when Grand Theft Auto 3 came out, and it revolutionized open world gaming and helped literally bring a new era and style of gaming to the world, right? You know, people celebrated that. That was something that people were like, hey, look at that. That's fucking awesome. You can explore the world around you and do all these cool things in an open world. And I mean, GTA 3 compared to like today's technology, it's nothing, right? Like, imagine if GTA 3 came out today. Like, that's how we'll be talking about GTA 6, I assume, right? But like back then when the game came out, it was hailed as a fucking classic. People loved it. You know, it revolutionized video games. Imagine if that game came out today. You'd have people in fucking IGN and on Twitter, well, we can't expect this to be the new standard. I mean, not every studio can develop an open world game like Rockstar can, which we've learned over time is true, but that's because Rockstar sets their own fucking standard. And every time they release one of these games, it ushers in a new era for gaming. It ushers in a new, some sort of revolutionary, you know, development in gaming. and it helps set a new benchmark, right? But, you know, now in gaming, oh, we can't do that. We can't set new benchmarks. We can't aim for the fucking stars, right? It seems to me like as time goes on, more and more game developers are like really worried about creating a good product and being passionate about that product, and they're just more worried about satisfying their boss. Which I get it, right? Like, you have to make your boss happy, and they work under a lot of crunch and whatnot, but when did the gaming industry become so afraid of, like, actually challenging themselves to be better? When did the gaming industry decide that actually trying to set new benchmarks for you to beat is a bad thing? Like, imagine this same logic being applied to virtually any other industry on the planet, right? Imagine where, I don't know, like, there's two construction companies competing with one another, right? And one construction company figures out a process to make their concrete structures 10 times more stable and cost-effective than all the other construction companies, right? And instead of, like, adapting and trying to one-up that and being like, oh, hey, we can do fucking better. We can do it 20 times better, right? All these other construction companies were like, well, we can't imagine that being the benchmark, right? Like, we can't set that as the new standard of success, can we? Or like an airline company, right? Their fucking plane, they figure out something that makes it 2 times faster and 2 times safer. And all the other airline companies are like, well, we can't have that be the new standard, you know what I mean? That just wouldn't work out. Or like McDonald's and Burger King. You know, McDonald's comes out with the double Big Mac and it fucking revolutionizes fast food or something. And Burger King sits around like, well, I mean, they can't expect that to be the new benchmark, right? Like that can't definitely be the new standard. Like, imagine if that was the logic and the rationale that people in industries throughout history always used. We would not be making progress as a society. A point of working in these kinds of industries, right? For me, I would think, is to try and create the best product possible. And EA and Activision and Ubisoft and all these fucking companies can sit around and cope and fucking moan all they want about how this can't be the new standard. They can have their buddies at IGN writing up these fucking think pieces about how it's not possible because all of these fucking journalists are bought and paid for by the AAA industry. Let's be serious. There's no way they actually believe this, but you know, they can get them to write that shit up, but magically they can't figure out how to get thousands of developers and $250 million of budget to make a good fucking Call of Duty game. That's apparently impossible. I don't know, like, it's pathetic. It's a pathetic mentality to me that people in this industry would really sit back and watch their, I guess, competition do better than them. And for their first reaction to be, oh, I don't know if we can replicate that same success. Not sure that could be the benchmark for the future, right? It's fucking pathetic. Imagine, for instance, Kobe Bryant, right, was in the gym and he saw fucking Brian Scalabrine, you know, just somebody people wouldn't think was good, come out on the court and drop 50. You think Kobe was going to go back to the locker room and he was going to be like, well, I don't think that could be the new standard, man. There ain't no way I'm reaching 55. That motherfucker would have been in the gym at 1 a.m. shooting free throws until his arms gave out, right? Because that's what winners do. That's what successful people do. That's what hard workers do. And I think the video game industry has unfortunately become saturated with a lot of people who may be actually passionate about video games, but they're not passionate about creating incredible video games. Sure, they love the fact that they get to make video games for a living, but they don't love the idea of pushing themselves to create a new fucking benchmark or a new era in gaming. It's unfortunate, man. It really is, because we as consumers end up suffering. And then when games like Baldur's Gate 3 come along, and they're kind of like, I guess, the needle in the haystack, and they actually come out really good, and the developers did a wonderful job on it, right? People are genuinely surprised and excited, and then all of that surprise and excitement is instantaneously tried to be ripped away from them by cynical assholes who are too afraid to do a better job. It's a pathetic mentality, man. So anyway, with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel, follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at SubTheOptimus. Make sure to check out Shoptimus down below. Thank you to my Watch Optimus subscribers. Your support helps the channel tremendously. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus. Well, honestly, just waiting for Baldur's Gate 3 to install so I can play it, and signing out.